Hey, what's up, you guys? Bloody Jacob here to bring you a video talking about the first half of Season 4 of Vikings on history, as well as mainly my thoughts on the finale, or at least the mid-season finale we've gotten of Season 4, which was a while ago, which is called The Last Ship. I know this aired all the way back in April, so I'm way late getting around to talking about this, but I did fall behind with work and just trying to keep up with other shows. But I did just catch up on the first half of Season 4, and I wanted to do a video and just sort of give my thoughts on it as a whole so far, and just on the mid-season finale specifically. I did do a video quite a while ago, regarding the first couple episodes of Season 4. But yeah, so overall, how has the season been for me so far? Overall, very good, I want to say. Definitely hasn't been the best, but it definitely had some really good things going for it. And the mid-season finale had to be one of the best episodes of the series ever, I think. But before we talk about the mid-season finale specifically, there were some things that didn't really work for me so far in the first half of Season 4 for me. Like all the stuff in Wessex and, Paris and stuff like that, a lot of that just ended up falling sort of flat for me. I don't know what it is, but just the stuff that isn't regarding Ragnar and the rest of our main group, just never ends up being particularly as interesting or as compelling. Although Rollo, of course, Rollo being in Paris does help things, but as far as the politics between the king there, his daughter, and then when you go to Wessex and you get characters like Egbert, his son's wife, his son Ethelwulf, just something about it isn't as interesting, and I feel like they focus too much time on them. And I get they're trying to build a bigger cast because eventually Ragnar's story is going to end. But I still feel like they didn't need to spend as much time with them as they did. And I'm not the only one that feels that way, apparently, because I see a lot of people kind of complaining about that. It's not to say it's poorly done or anything, it's just that we don't care about what's going on there nearly as much as we do with, Ragnar, Lagertha, and the others. But, we had some decent developments of that, I guess. We had Rollo sort of moving up and command, becoming the Duke, with defending Paris and stuff like that, which really came to a head in the mid-season finale episode. We also had Lagertha dealing with Kaf towards the beginning of the season. It was, I think it was episode 5, which is called Promise. That's where she finally decided to kill him. Of course, we've seen Kaf here is basically conspiring against Lagertha anyway, eventually, even with wanting to marry her and, getting her pregnant. But Lagertha kind of seen through that, and she had promised that she would kill him eventually quite a while ago, and she did. She held up to her word, and, she gave him a good stabbing. So that was kind of satisfying. Next to the stuff with Rollo and Paris and stuff was fine. I still found Rollo to be a good character. Just everything surrounding him in that area, I didn't find overly intriguing, like I talked about a minute ago. Something else I wanted to address was Ragnar and Yidu. Yidu was a character I actually found to be pretty interesting when she was first introduced. Sorry, the dog barking is distracting me. But anyway, I did feel like her character is sort of wasted in the end, though, because at first I felt like her and Ragnar sort of had an interesting connection, that she was touching a point in his mind that no one has in a while. I don't know, but she basically ends up being his drug dealer. She has this, Chinese medicine, and Ragnar basically ends up being addicted to it, and this causes, some hallucinations and other, sort of psychological problems, and when he doesn't get a certain amount of it so soon after the other, he starts to, of course, what all drug users eventually do when they're off it for something they're addicted to for a while. And basically when Yidu refuses to give him more, he ends up drowning her, and that's kind of that. So I like the Edu stuff had a lot of potential, but it just didn't really end up working with the way they decided to just kill her off. Other little criticisms, not really. I mean, things are still well done. Still has a really good quality to it. Like of course it's still great that the show's filmed on location. So the scenery looks as good as always. The acting is always on point. Even though I don't find this, like the King Egbert stuff, overly interesting, I still really like the actor playing him. I think he does a good job. So I can always give him credit for that. And again, just as a whole, I just don't find the stuff outside of the Ragnar related stories as interesting. But we'll see how it goes. And we also had an interesting time with Bjorn this season as well, because he was on his own for a while, sort of trying to prove something to himself and to his father as well. And of course, he had the Berserker Viking sent after him by King Horik's son and calf and such. And so I made for some cool scenes earlier in the season, like in the mountains and such. And I like the whole exchange between them and how Bjorn ended up trapping the guy. And basically, he ended up tearing his intestines out, didn't he? So that was brutal. Let's see what else. I know that the main thing I want to talk about, I'm just trying to figure out if there's any other little things I want to mention. Okay, and I did talk about this in the previous video I did about Season 4 regarding the first couple episodes I mentioned. That I mentioned at the beginning of this video. But as far as the Ragnar and Floki thing goes, that was one of the things that I thought was going to be like a big concentration for the first half of the season. Of course, with Floki, killing Athelstan. And Ragnar basically ends up giving him mercy. He spares his life. He does leave him hanging. He starves him for a while in this cave, which is a punishment. But he does end up freeing him and sort of, maybe not completely letting it go, but just sort of letting him endure what he endures. And I don't know, I feel like, Floki, he's a fun character, but I almost would prefer if Floki was just, killed and executed eventually. I don't know, I feel like that would have been more satisfying, and now you just kind of leave it just sort of there with him and Ragnar. It is what it is, I guess. I think it could have been handled a little bit better, personally. Okay, it sounds like I'm bitching a lot about this half season, but there was a lot of positive that I ended up getting out of it. I thought Ragnar has been really, really interesting in his development and sort of his process throughout the first half season was really interesting, like getting hooked on the drugs. One thing though, I've sort of been feeling like that they're almost trying to make Ragnar more unlikable so they can kill him off and not have us be as upset. I still find Ragnar to be a very lovable. Well, lovable is probably a weird word for it, but I still find him to be a very fun and very compelling character that I feel a lot for. Travis Fimmel does such an amazing job in the role. Easily, such a great acting performance on the show. I do think Ragnar's life is going to come to an end eventually on the show. I almost feel like it might happen late in the second half of Season 4, towards the end of it maybe, or Season 5 at the very latest. I did sort of, I'm not going to spoil anything, but usually Vikings, at least in general, does follow like real history. And I did look up what eventually happened or didn't happen to the real Ragnar in history. And so I think whatever it does, I think they'll end up showing it, because they are moving things along quite a bit faster at this point, because with the sort of time jump we had in the mid-season finale with more of his sons being grown up, being almost as old as Bjorn, you can tell they're starting to set up for something to be a little bit different about it. But Ragnar himself, like I said, is really, really interesting in the first half. And despite their efforts to make me not like him or something, I still find him to be easy, of course, the best part of the show and someone I'm always going to root for. And he does have a lot of flaws, but Ragnar's just awesome, man. And I thought it was interesting the way they focused on his psyche in the first half of Season 4. How he no longer has this drive to go adventuring and conquer, sailing and stuff like that. he no longer has like that drive and passion for it like he did, like in season 1 and 2 mainly. So I found that to be pretty interesting. It almost feels like they're building to something eventually happening to him. And despite the stuff with Yudu not really working, him taking the Chinese medicine or the opium, whatever you want to call it, it did provide a really actually a pretty powerful moment with one of the hallucinations he ended up having. And I think that was in episode 6, I think. Let me see, because I did post about it on Facebook when I watched it. Yep, episode 6. Because as he's sailing along the boat with the others, we see he has this vision of, sort of his past life or his earlier life, sort of where we first met him in season 1. He sees like Lagatha, he sees Gisla, of course the daughter that died right at the end of season 1 into season 2. And, of course he sees like a younger Bjorn and stuff like that. And I just thought it was a really touching scene, the music they had with that, as he was looking at it, and you see this like white horse coming along, which again I think is starting to symbolize something eventually happening to him. I don't know. I feel like you might sort of get like a scene like that when something eventually does, perhaps. But you can just see like Ragnar, he does like long for his previous life. There's a part of him that does miss it. There's, of course, he is full of regret. And of course he sees the mistakes he's made, of course he would. But there's nothing you can really do about it now at this point. Only once in a while we do see him and Lagatha still having like a bond that isn't really going to be shaken. Like even Lagatha, as much as she holds against Ragnar, when we hear like these other characters come in, they're you can tell they're sort of like plotting against him, and Lagatha says, "Don't ever say something like that about Ragnar Lothbrok in front of me." So, they still do have a mutual respect and still sort of a form of love for each other, I think. But I just thought it was really interesting and makes Ragnar just as compelling as ever with, different layers to him and the feelings he has like that, which I found just to be amazing, and that scene was absolutely great. It's even on my favorites playlist. But yeah. So those are my thoughts on most of the season. I could go into more specifics, but it could take quite a while. I don't want the video to be too long. But I did want to talk about the mid-season finale specifically again. The last ship, which ended up being an amazing episode, one of the best of the series. Even though the season itself, or at least the first half of it anyway, it's sort of okay, decent. The last ship was a great episode, and like I said, one of the best we've ever gotten of the show. Of course, with Rollo, him being the main defense against Ragnar, and him saying like earlier on, if my brother is still alive, he is not defeated. Because Ragnar will not give up, he'll keep trying, he's not just going to leave it. Or at least like the old Ragnar wouldn't anyway. The final battle between them on the river was just really well shot. Like, all the battles this season were really good, but just the way they shoot these scenes, man, on the water, it looks, so real, and so it gets more and more brutal. We see a guy's hand get chopped off. It's history, so it's not like HBO or something, but we still do see a good amount of violence with it. And we finally get Ragnar and Rollo having a one-on-one physical confrontation and fight, which is just really awesome. So fucking intense, man. And we even see Lagatha. She actually ends up getting stabbed in the shoulder. I was kind of worried about that, but they're not going to kill Lagatha. She already did lose her child, unfortunately, as well earlier on. But the battle in the mid-season finale is just really, really awesome. The best part, of course, being Ragnar and Rollo, like I said. They just keep hitting each other back and forth in the face over and over, just really brutal looking. And that's been built up for such a long time, ever since season 1. We've seen pieces of their rivalry and sort of Rollo's jealousy and envy towards Ragnar. And now they're sort of coming at each other from very different angles than they ever have before. And Ragnar even admitting to Bjorn that he doesn't really care about Paris. He just wants, to get back at Rollo for his betrayal. And, Rollo, how do I feel about Rollo in general? Of course, I'm on Team Ragnar for sure, but, Rollo, he's kind of complex to talk about because, I sort of had a respect for him in Season 2 once he sort of admitted to Ragnar that, I wanted to step out of your shadow. You understand that, don't you? And then it seemed like he was sort of going to be on his side for it all again, but then eventually he betrayed him again when over in Paris, and here we are now. So I kind of lost respect for Rollo after that, of course. But his speech to the men as he's trying to lead them to defend against the Northmen and his brother and such, again, well done, by the actor playing Clive Strandon and stuff. I still think Rollo is a pretty awesome character, but I definitely can't really root for him as much as I could Ragnar. And I don't think there's really any reconciliation in store for Ragnar and Rollo anymore. I just think it is what it is now. And Ragnar, he's not at his strongest, but still a fight between Rollo was really back and forth. It was really even. And it still looked like Ragnar was sort of edging Rollo out by a little bit. And then what ended up happening is that in general, Rollo's forces were defeating the army Ragnar brought, and Ragnar picked up his axe one last time, and it looks like he's going to charge at Rollo again because he said only one of them was going to leave alive today. But then some of the men actually end up tackling Ragnar and putting him on the ship so they can retreat. So I guess we'd think that they would have another confrontation eventually, but I don't know realistically if what would be the point. I don't know. So that whole battle scene is just absolutely great. And in a way, it was nice to see Rollo, sort of get recognition from the king and such. And the king in Paris or whatever, France, he's just weird. I don't know. Again, I don't really care about the stuff outside of Ragnar, Lagertha, Bjorn, and Rollo, but specifically anyway. I like Rollo, but I don't care about the stuff around him. So that was great. And then the time jump, I didn't really expect there to be that big of a time jump in the mid-season finale. We see Ragnar's other sons with Aslog, grow up, even the handicapped, paralyzed one, such. Ivar. So that was pretty interesting. The IGN review criticized it, but I thought it was actually played pretty well. We find out, of course, with Ragnar, his farming community he had built after they left Wessex, of course, that was destroyed. They find out that he had kept that a secret from them. And then sort of the sons sort of debate about it, how they would kill Ragnar if he ever came back. And we find out that Ragnar has gone into hiding for quite a few years now, where no one's seen him anyway. And they think that's because he's ashamed of his defeat by Rollo's hands and such. But Bjorn sort of defends Ragnar, saying despite everything, he's still the greatest man he's ever known. And so I really like someone actually defending Ragnar for a change, despite all the shit he's pulled. But Ragnar, we're not sure where he's been. I'm sure we'll probably hear about it, when Season 4 returns later this year when they air the other half of the season. Some people have a theory that he went to China and sort of, gained a better handle on how the opium or whatever was affecting him. And I do think, obviously, he has one way or another. He does seem to be in a more, maybe not stable, but a more, focused mindset than he was before. So I'm glad about that. I'm glad they're not going to drag that out into the second half. And Ragnar is sort of challenging any of his sons to kill him. He knows how they must feel about him, so he gives them all a chance to grab the sword and try and stab him, and he gives other random people in the crowd a chance as well. So it looks like Ragnar is kind of taking back his spot, perhaps. But yeah, really intense. And with it, as old as his sons are now, they're all almost at least around 20 or so, right? Sometimes I do feel like they should have made the other characters look a little bit older with these time jumps. I mean, we have Floki. We see Floki's bald now, where he has a little pony thing on the back of his head and a longer beard. But I feel like characters like Helga and stuff should look a little bit older than they are if their sons are almost 20 or a little bit under, give or take, at this point. Just feels a little bit weird. But Ragnar, he has a bigger beard and a little bit more white in it, which is cool. Love the beard, of course. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the first half of Season 4. Overall, it was decent, but with a great episode and the last ship, one of the best battles we've ever had on the show, maybe the best battle we've ever had. Great episode all around, and it really leaves us in an interesting place for the continuation of Season 4 later this year. And when Season 4 does return, I will try to review the episodes each week. I can't promise anything, though, but I'm going to try to make Vikings a bigger part of my channel when it does come back, because it is a very well done show. So yeah, let me know what you guys thought about Season 4 so far, the finale, or the mid-season finale specifically, and where you think it's going to go with the whole time jump thing. Yeah, so I'll catch you guys next time. Maybe I'll do another little video on Vikings talking about how Jonathan Rhys Meyers is actually going to be in Season 5. That was announced a while ago, but I'll be talking about that at some point. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and lookforinsploited.com. And peace.